What I did want to talk about today is painting for tournaments and the tournament like painting system and rubrics and whatnot. Because I've seen this resurface like a lot recently in the past like couple of weeks, and in the last events we threw there were a couple of like weird issues with this. So I figured, let's talk about this. Let's put it out there. What's the hobby requirement when it comes to tournament, or what's the etiquette about it? As you guys maybe know, maybe don't know, I love tournaments. I love attending events, and most of the stuff that I paint for myself is to go to an event, or for usually for people that want to play tournaments. Not exclusively, but a lot of it. And I've been in this kind of scene since I think 2014 or 13 or something like that. Like when I started, like my first like tournament, my first event was I think 2013. That I went to once. I've been in this for a solid 10. Well, first let's talk about this. Maybe sometimes you might hear this three color standard thing or three color minimum thing. That's a really old saying. That was before, I guess, before 2019. That was kind of the not the standard, but that was the minimum requirement for attending a tournament. Your miniature had to be three colors on them, and it was really loose. But it was different times, I guess. And so essentially what that meant is this model right here, three color, it's okay to play in a tournament. Because there's green, there's bone color here, and then there's a little eagle that's painted in gold. Three color, thank you, goodbye. You can play in this event. Good luck. So that's kind of the old thing. And then this also led to some like really ugly thing, or of like a plastic mini with like three dots of paint on like one shoulder plates, and a mall that you like prime white, and then you dip in like a can of pink, and then halfway, and then you dip like only the head in like brown, and then you have like a three colored space marine, and then you do that with your entire army. All kind of like, I guess, urban legend at this point. Nobody knows. Everybody knows a guy that knows a guy that saw it, but So that was kind of the old requirement, and it's kind of like sticking still today, especially again from old ads and like people that were kind of in there or that knew about tournaments back then. We're lucky that it doesn't happen anymore, or less and less. I'm gonna say less and less, especially in the bigger events where they don't even like let you play. Right? There's been a couple like Games Workshop, like on their stream, you need a minimum of painting. So I think Adepticon also enforced that this year. And I think two people were like kind of asked, like not even asked, but they were told like, "Hey, you can't move on in this tournament because every game's going to be streamed or something like that, and your malls are it's just too bad." So there's definitely like steps that have been enforced, and the main like step is what kind of replaced like the successor of three color minimum, which is battle ready, and this was actually, I'm pretty sure it was like invented basically by the ITC back when it was like a frontline gaming thing, and it could be, and I remember this because it caused like a lot of uproar where they were like, they put like actual like hobby guideline of like, you should do this and that. We will not tolerate three color, like your space marine dip to the three different ways, no go. And then they put like this, like we want your army to be this and that, and then that was kind of a, there was a little bit of pushback, but then in 2019, Games Workshop released this battle ready thing. So what constitutes battle ready, and that's I think their policy for the bunker, in Nottingham, I think the battle bunker or whatever it's called. And then it moved on when they restarted doing the Games Workshop Open, like their tournament series, to having this little standard here, which is battle ready. Now this is the updated one because they have the contrast, but essentially battle ready is one color on every surface. Like all the details must be painted appropriately. So our green buddy here from earlier, Space Marine Bill, you are three color minimum. You are not battle ready. However, the main thing about battle ready is that, and this picture here, this picture, it's kind of a little bit, maybe I'll say misleading, because the model is actually like good. Battle ready is not a terms of like beautifulness. It's a yes or no question. Is this miniature fully painted? And so and because again, people sometimes just don't like painting, right? It happens. It's okay. It's a different side of the hobby, and so sometimes their models are about ready, but they're not, pretty. And there's literally the minimum that's done. Like if you look at the contrast, like you prime your mirror in white, and then you contrast it, it's a very very mild model. Like it's okay. And and then we've talked about this, and there's a million videos on my channel, other channels, about like how to step up this like super simple if you don't like it. But it's bell ready, right? Everything on it is painted and to like what it should be, basically, right? So the gun is not like blue like the Space Marine. It's got like some silver on it. The gun could be all silver in our example. Everything is what it kind of supposed to be. But again, the main thing is this is not really a question of beauty, and that this kind of this is where I think it gets a little bit misleading. Where there's also the hobby track, and the hobby track is literally painting points, like how beautiful is this army, right? Like the part of like a painting contest. So to be battle ready, to claim your points, and to usually be able to attend events where you need to be battle ready, this is the standard. The standard is a very yes/no kind of situation. It's not really hard. The base has to be done, and the miniatures need to, like, every detail on the miniature needs to be painted some color. It's pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry. Like there's not a lot of like room for it, but nowhere does it say it should look good. It's not a point of contention, but it's a thing maybe that people get stuck on where, but this is not beautiful. No, but it is still battle ready, right? So, and then the hobby track is the place where this is, the place where it's all over the place. Because the hobby track, or the painting rubric, or the checklist, or call it what you want to call it, is essentially the tournament's painting competition. Now you take all of the battle ready armies, and then you pair them against each other, or against like criterias. And now this is where it gets frustrating. It get weird. So the main thing, every tournament usually puts out a painting rubric, or a painting grid, or a checklist, call it what you want to call it. And it looks something like that. I made a template. I made this in 2 minutes. So every tournament is different, but it's always slightly the same. So something like this, where you're going to have, categories, and is it done? Is that part done here? So for example, the army is fully painted, yes or no? Is it battle ready? Yes? Okay, cool. The army is painted with a cohesive team. So now this is a fun one. This is in a lot of, this is not in a lot of painting grid, and I think it should be. It's like, basically, does it look like one army, or did you borrow units from 6 different people to make your army, right? Is it like an Ultramarine army, or is it like red Space Marine, green Space Marine, yellow Space Marines, and then your custom chapter across the whole thing, which I like this. The army contains conversion now. A lot of events, they have like weird conversion or extended conversion policy. What's a conversion? Is it like you use 3D printed bits, and this is usually valued kind of high in the matrices, because it's a lot of extra effort. So it's usually rewarded. The bases are textured. Do you just like spray paint your bases brown, or do you actually put like sand and stuff on it? Texture. Anything goes. The base contains multiple textures and colors. Again, did you put sand and just left the fucking sand on there? Or did you put like sand and little tufts of grass and you do a little dry brush or something? It's usually, a little difference. The army has extra details. So again, this is sometimes broken down into different categories, but you have banners. Do you paint the banners? It is something. Do you have like squad markings or unit markings or whatever? Do you have freehand on there? It can be something as like the eyes are painted, or the scrolls are like detailed and whatnot. There's a lot of like extra details. Is a fun one, because it's usually the difference between straight battle ready and this is my army, not like an army, right? And then the display board. The army comes with a display board. This is usually rewarded because first of all it's free, and second of all it's convenient. Like the guy that plays like 200 gaunts, that he puts them all back into his little battle foam, and at the beginning of the game he pulls them all out like one by one. It takes him forever to set up. Fuck that person, okay? So having a display board that you can like put your entire army around, it's easy to show, so you get to see, like your opponent gets to see what's what, and it's pretty. So just having a display board is kind of usually rewarded, and then the display board is teamed with the army, right? Is it like we used to have a Dunkin' Donuts next to our old store, and people would just like steal trays and put their army on the... We borrowed, I'm sorry, Duncan, we borrowed the trays and put armies on top. So, that's not really it's it's to display it or whatever, so it serves the first purpose, but it's not really themed. And then this is also something that usually tournaments get like big reward. Like for example, Adepticon is like a big part of Adepticon, like the display board. If you don't have a display board, you're not winning painting at Adepticon ever. Whereas some other events like Nova, they were not as maybe strict or as rewarding for the display board, right? And then the last category is like judges appreciation. There's not a lot. I'll talk about this a little bit more later. I like this format. Again, this is my template. Of course, I like it. The main thing is like a lot of these categories are yes or no, and they're all viewed as reward. Again, the pitfall of this is if you look at just the top part, like if you bypass the judges appreciation, these are all yes or no questions. So again, this is kind of another thing of, are you good in painting? Do you enjoy it or whatever? Is it beautiful? It's not really included in this, right? Nowhere does it have the word beautiful, or is it like subject to anyone's approval. These are all yes/no categories of did you do this, and these are very specific. And one of my friend, he used to say he was a checklist painter, whereas he would look at like the rubric of a tournament and he would make sure that he checked all of the boxes. And his armies were very kind of, I guess, average. Like they were probably above average, but they would always score a lot of points because this is a point system of yes, no. So it would, are my base textured? Okay, I will texture all my bases. Do my bases have like multiple texture? Okay, well I'll add grass and I'll add snow or whatever. And then and he would do this systematically before he went to an event, and he would look at like what they reward, and then he would go about it. So I like this again because this rewards you for just like basic stuff, and again does not need to be pretty. It just needs to be there. And I think that's also a big distinction that a lot of like events make, is that their rubric is a little bit too subjective, where you can do stuff, but if it's not pretty, you're not going to get points for it, which is kind of like shitty for, again. This is kind of rewarding effort, because effort is really, really hard to judge in painting, right? And that's like a main point of this whole thing is you can't really judge effort. You have to judge result. This is how, sadly, art works. I distinctly remember like a guy at Adepticon explaining how he did his white in like 17 different steps, and he was explaining this whole complex like process, and I went this color and then this color and then I do this and then I do this, and the guy next to him had a much more beautiful white army, and he just looked and like he was not like being an asshole or anybody, and he was like talking about like, yeah, it's like this gray and then I do 2 coats of white on top, and his army was like much more prettier. So it's really hard to judge effort because like I don't know, it took you like I don't really care at the end that it took you 5 minutes to get that white, and that it took you 23 steps and a master's degree in engineering to design your own white paint. You kind of reward the result. But having these yes/no questions, that allows you to reward effort. Did you put, did you paint banners on your stuff? Yes, no. Did you put like squad markings or what have you? Because I play demons, there's no squad marking. Like there's stuff that you can do on demons to get like that yes or no question, right? The demons have banners and what, like there's stuff that you can do. Yeah, do you have conversion? Just convert one guy when the judge is around and say, hey, look, I did this. I used to have like an Epidemius mold that was like a plague bear on top of a porta potty that was like 3D printed. It was the most simplistic thing ever. Got me all my conversion points all the time I played that army. So I feel like that is like a very easy way of like, it's rewarding effort without counting too much on the end result. Sadly, the end result is really what counts, and that's where the like judges' appreciation comes in, right? Because otherwise you would look at this and just go, well, everybody that did all the criterias, their painting score would be like, I don't know, 10 or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 would be 8 points. Okay, good. You all get 8. Congratulations. And nobody is like a real winner. So judges' appreciation now is the interesting part, or like however you want to discern. Now that's where the subjective part of art comes into play. Where do you like this, or is what that person did pretty? And I choose 12 on this like example because it gives me a 20 point, which is kind of an easy mark. So you could go a very simple way of like the best person at that tournament, like the army that you feel is the best out there, gets a 12 in that category, and then you mark everybody in the range below. And so, the best person out there, he gets like the full 20 because he probably hit all the boxes because they're all very easy to hit. Or maybe he gets 18 because he doesn't have a display board. And then you move on from there, and that's where putting extra effort gets you more points. So for example, conversion on our... I should leave it up. So, for example, conversion on this is just worth 1 point. Maybe a guy, his entire army is converted. Well, judges' appreciation will reflect that, and that, hey man, this guy is not just like, he sculpted the fucking, air on one space marine or what have you, a kit swap or something. Or, all of his faces have like, the guy plays Imperial Guard, and all of his faces have like stubble or a beard, and all the eyes are painted. That's worth like some points. And again, that's how you differentiate, somebody that has a cohesive army but no really advanced technique with somebody that like every single model has like super sick blending on shoulder plates and whatnot. Or like advanced effect like OSL and stuff. Again, display board, right? My display board is teamed with my army. It's like just a flat board with like sand, and it's the same color as my base. And then the other guy over there, he built like a 7'3", the 3 of life with like, I don't know, custodies and whatnot in it, or what have you. So he would get, more points. And that's where you see the differential. So, but realistically, somebody that like paid a little bit of attention, even if they have like zero skill in hobbying, he would get 8 points, right? Your army is butt ugly, but you would end up with 8 out of 20, which is like a kind of a reasonable score. And it's really hard for a judge to give you 0 out of 12. So that's kind of, and again, I made this in 2 minutes. The one that we use is a little bit more complex, and it's got like more yes or no categories. But I tried to do this because this takes away a lot of the judging, like power, so to speak. For example, one year, I remember the boys one year, they liked like weathered army, like grimy army. And a lot of the armies that were maybe better painted in the grand scheme of things, they scored lower than a lot of the armies with a lot of weathering because they dig that. And that's kind of like a judge's bias. Like every judge has a bias in meaning it's something that they like. Like I like certain stuff, you like certain stuff. Everybody likes some stuff. So one thing that I really like is, first of all, the way to do this is like a bunch of yes/no questions. Is like, do you like it or not? I don't really care. Is it there, yes or no? And then you have 2 judges do the appreciation, and they just have to average it out. So they might disagree on stuff, but usually you'll get like a pretty close. And if somebody likes, one of my buddy that helped me do a lot of painting, he loves like fluo stuff, like the 80s vibe, like Miami Vice and stuff, like synthwave stuff. He loves that. I'm not that guy. So when we pull our 2 scores, I tend to rate those armies maybe a little bit lower, but he tends to rate them a little bit higher. So so it kind of averages out. I like this aspect because then again you get a lot of this thing out of the way. But the most like important kind of thing, I guess, about this is like the effort that you put in. It should be aimed at like the same thing as the game, where you should put your effort where the points are more than anything else, because it's really hard to judge effort, right? Like, yeah, I don't know that you train like 5 games a week for playing 40K, but if we play and I beat you, the effort that you put in, even if it's not up to my effort, I mean, die strategy, just like whatever. Same thing kind of applies into painting, where effort is really hard to judge, but it's kind of important because not a lot of people are into the same thing. And that's kind of important to kind of reward effort where it's possible to do it, but it cannot overtake everything where, if a judge knows somebody, right? Like the judge is local and he knows that this guy has put more effort into his army, but he doesn't know this guy from out of town. You have to rate them in the same way. You're bad at art, but I know you put a lot of effort because I know you, versus you are completely unknown and this thing looks very average. They should be rewarded the same regardless, because again, effort is really hard to judge in an overall scheme, right? So that was kind of my 2 cents. Maybe I guess it was way more opinionated than I thought I would do. I wanted to do a very formal thing, and it's a trigger point for me. Anyway, if you disagree or agree with what I just said, I'm be very interested to hear about it. And if you want to talk more about this, also say so because I love, visibly, I love talking about this.